there may be, as there comes sometimes with a life of chastity and celibacy, that there may be at times aloneness. But that's not evil. Aloneness helps us to appreciate ourselves, remember that we are a gift. And also within that aloneness, sometimes that there can be, and of course I can't predict that for any individual person, there is the constant call from God for the gift of self in many beautiful ways. And the moment we restrict ourselves to say, my life is of value only when I can express myself physically and sexually, and I sum up my value in that regard, then I have a very inadequate understanding of my own self-worth and dignity. Let me assure you, priests deal a lot with sin and grace. There are heaps of people who are sexually active who are very, very lonely. Don't be taken in for a second by that lie, that unless you're in a relationship that means physically active and the more the better and somehow you'll be satisfied. Come on, that's the path of broken hearts. Be very, very aware. That's a deceptive lie, because the world never reveals to you the pieces that are picked up by those who love for years following. They just show you scenes, incidents, breakups, reunions. They don't show you nightmares, fear of going out at night, people crying themselves to sleep. Cherish yourself as a gift. Whatever your struggle is, never cheapen yourself. Thanks for your question. We might have to finish.
Maybe one more.
One more question, perhaps? Is that a question? No? All right, it's not. Fine. I can ask you a question if you like. Please.
Just in reference to the description, which is same sex, and that on the one, and I'm sort of wondering how sort of intellectually or whatever you come, what I see a paradox in what you're saying and how you deal with that paradox, if you could explain that to me. On the one hand, you're saying that we should appeal to the whole person and to look at it that way, and yet we're talking about something which is sort of, you're isolating a whole human being in terms of their position in the church, which although you say that they should be embraced, etc., yet that part of them is actually rejected. It's not celebrated. And I saw a very interesting play at the Melbourne Arts Festival called Mum, I'm Dancing, about a woman who was a transgender person and started off as a male, physically, etc. Fascinating and a very thought-provoking personal account of her life. She's been in the late 50s, early 60s now. What she essentially said was that the emphasis is all about sex, but the issue is about a person, and the best way to describe it would be to talk about it as a gender issue rather than a sex issue. And I'm wondering, see, that's sort of where I feel what you're saying falls down, because you're saying to appeal to them as a whole being, and yet it's isolated down to sex. And that's, I find, to be difficult to hang together what you're saying.
I'm happy to comment on that. Did you hear sufficiently the points? Okay, so first, just I don't have time to go into great detail, but just briefly, the question of transgender, if it weren't just, okay, but I just thought I'd throw this in because you threw it in, all right? So if it were simply about gender and not about physiological sexual orientation or the physiological dimension of the person, then why would a person get a sex change? And we understand that too as respecting the integrity of the body, and part of the church's teaching is, and I think commonsensically understood, that there is no sense in which we can embrace any form of self-mutilation as well. And that's something, please keep that very much in mind, because we cherish the body as it is and we seek to embrace. And let's lead into the next point, is that what the church tries to do is not so much isolate a part of the person and not celebrate it. I think what we would best describe it as being is we see whatever brings the human person to perfection is the most intrinsic essence of the person, and that is what we can only in conscience try to celebrate as beautiful and something that enriches the human being. So I wouldn't take the presupposition that it is actually part of the person. We're basing it on the aspect that the human nature is ordered towards an openness of complementarity and life. And if we were to say that it is a part of the person, however we're not going to celebrate it, that would actually go against the understanding we have of human nature. What we say is that human nature is ordered in a certain beautiful, self-giving way, and anything, whether it be any type of behaviour that leads a person contrary to their nature, any type of behaviour at all, whether it's aggression, gambling, or any violence, or anything, if it's got into the person, isn't legitimately a part of the person unless they embrace that, hold on to it and choose it. But what we're seeking to help the person understand themselves and what is it to be fully human in the law of Christ and in human nature, and to bring that to perfection. And therefore our mission is with joy and love, not to isolate, but to celebrate all that is truly beautiful, pure and self-giving. That's some thoughts.
Just have a small token of our appreciation to you, Father Paul, for coming here tonight, especially at such short notice. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Dr. Timothy Locke. Dr. Locke is a licensed clinical psychologist in private practice, a member of the National Association for Research and Therapy of Homosexuality and the Catholic Medical Association. Dr. Locke specialises in moving around and work with individuals who struggle with unwanted same-sex attraction. He's offered workshops for professionals and published articles and book chapters in the area of psychological trauma and traumatic memory. As a practicing Roman Catholic, Dr. Locke conducts psychological evaluations of applicants to the seminary and religious life, as well as offers lectures and workshops for priests and seminarians. Dr. Locke is married and has 7 children and has joined us tonight from Connecticut in the United States. So please make him welcome.
Good evening. I want to thank the many people who made it possible for me to be here tonight, from the Archbishop, Father Laurie, to Mari and Alan, Father Czech, and all the good folks throughout Australia who've helped make all this happen. 2 things I want to say before I get started are this. First, the Catechism of the Council Catholic Church talks about individuals with same-sex attraction, and it says that this topic, that these people must be treated with respect, compassion, and sensitivity. And I'm going to try not to overlap too much with what Father just said, but some of my stuff will, so please excuse that. Respect, compassion, and sensitivity. And I find that so profound because these people... That was a little too profound. We're just going to leave it right there, and I'm going to stand far back. Okay. Respect, compassion, and sensitivity. I find it really profound. I do. Because these folks that I see in my office have been treated with so much disrespect and such a lack of compassion, and rather harshly, really, very insensitively. Second, I want to say, before we get started here, is I want to quote a scripture kind of loosely, but I think it's important, and it's this. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts.